Hey, so this video is a quick tutorial on making sense of track mats and masks in After Effects. I'm not going to go that in depth. I just want to demystify some things. So I have an image here. I'm going to turn off the visibility. And to illustrate this, I'm going to have an ellipse. And the best way to think of track mat is pretend as if you have a fabric covering the lens of your camera. And wherever you have subject, you're going to see through. And wherever you have transparency, it will block out the image. So technically what you're doing is you're taking the transparency of this layer, putting it on this layer. So wherever you have alpha, you're going to have alpha here. Wherever you have transparency, it will block it out. So if I have my image turned on, and then I say track mat shape layer, you can see now I can see through this. And on the outside is blocked, and this is all based on alpha, or technically the opacity of this layer. So if I made this say 50%, you see the see-through changes. Now, one thing I think is very tricky with track mat is the name, because track makes it sound like you're tracking something. I prefer to call it layer mat because you're taking from the layer and putting it onto this layer. And then when you go over here, you'll see that you have, by default, it's set to alpha mat. And if you change this to luma mat, this is something that can be also tricky because it can be similar to alpha, but it's not the same. And the difference is the luma goes off of the luminance. So if, for example, I go to Window, Lumetri Scopes. And let's see what happens there. So click this. And let's see if I can get... Okay, so here I have the luminance. So this way, if I had the luminance of the shape layer, that's what this mask would go off of. So for example, with the luminance mat, if I go to effects presets and then say something like brightness contrast and put it onto the shape layer, let's see if we have it on the shape layer. Put this onto the shape layer. Okay, so now we have brightness contrast. So if I change the brightness, you'll see that is what is affecting that mat. So the reason I say that luma and alpha can be confusing is if you have luma just at a particular level, it almost looks as if you were to have, say, 50% opacity. So you can easily get tripped up over luma or alpha, but understand it's different. Alpha goes off of alpha goes off of opacity, and the luma goes off of the luminance. So that is track mat in a nutshell. And let me just quickly go over mask very quick. So mask, by contrast, is, let me just close the Lumetri scope. Mask by contrast is similar, but you have to have the layer selected, and similarly you can have a shape, and it's very similar to track mat where you see right through it, where the difference is it's on the layer and you can move it around, and other tutorials go a lot more in depth into masks and whatever. But the main thing I want to demystify is the reason it's confusing is what I think of as mask. I think a mask is supposed to cover. Like, I think this oval should block out and the outside should show. But if you invert it, in my opinion, I think of inverted mask as an actual mask. So if this ever trips you up, just remember that a normal mask you're actually seeing through it. So wherever the mask is, you're seeing through, and the outside is being blocked out. So if you people already know all this, fantastic. But if this helps anyone who gets tripped up, this is for you. So that's track mats and masks.